Without further ado, we introduce then our speaker, Annunziata Rositani, who will be speaking about King Rīm-Anum of Uruk, a reconstruction of an Old Babylonian rebel kingdom. Welcome, Annunziata.
Good evening, everybody. Okay. First, I would like to thank Armando Bramanti and Alexander Edmond for inviting me to this lecture, and also want to thank you all for being present this evening. In connection to the subject of these meetings, I would like to demonstrate that the study of cuneiform text can become an instrument for reconstructing history. In fact, in the absence of other historical sources, the study of text, namely the economic and administrative ones, especially the unpublished, proves to be fundamental to restore historical facts, sometimes also facts of great importance. In our particular case, a group of texts that are kept in many museums all over the world allowed us to shed light on the reign of King Rīm-Anum. This homogeneous group of more than 320 cuneiform tablets attests the existence in the Old Babylonian period in Mesopotamia of a particular entity called the Bit Asīrī, house of the asīrī. As we'll see later, the translation of the word asīrū has been discussed by many scholars. Some have referred to translate this as captive or war captive, others as prisoners or better, war prisoners. In particular, this evening we will contain a new king from the first attestation to the reconstruction of his archive of text, the previous chronological placement of the Rim-Anum's kingdom, new data from a new text bearing 3 seals, which gave a new chronological placement of the king of Rim-Anum, new data on the year names of Rim-Anum from some museums kept at the British Museum, chronological and geographical placement of the Rim-Anum kingdom in relation with other Old Babylonian kings, reconstruction with the operation thanks to the information in the text from the House of Prisoners of War, organization and management of war prisoners as forced laborers, the way to free prisoners of war. Among the more enigmatic texts without archaeological context that are now dispersed over many modern collections, there are a number of Old Babylonian tablets which carry names of ruler Rim-Anum. The texts known are scattered around in various collections in Europe and in the United States: British Museum, Kalamazoo Valley Museum, Free Library of Philadelphia, Oriental Institute University of Chicago, Princeton Theological Seminary, Yale Babylonian collection at the Yale University, and also at the École Pratique des Études des Hautes Études de Paris, Birmingham Museum of Art Gallery, Florence Museum, Musée Royal du Cinquantenaire de Bruxelles, Musée d'Art et d'Histoire de Genève. The first text was published in 1898 by Vincent Sale, Le Nouveau Roi Rim-Anum. This text brought to the attention of the community of scholars the existence of the new king Rim-Anum, never met before in other texts. Some years later, in 1914, Figula published 21 texts from the same provenance and dated by the same king Rim-Anum. In 1925, Schrippers published 2 other Rim-Anum texts. One other text was published in 1957 by Fish, another in 1916 by Oberauer. This archive of texts that had been formed was discussed at some length in 1961 by Leemans in a paper on the meaning of the term asīrū. Indeed, most of the Rim-Anum texts record the flower distribution for the Bit Asīrī, house of the prisoners, or enumerate persons who are intended to perform work. The latter may be described by the term asīrū, war prisoners. Many of these prisoners, as well as other persons named in the text, are designated by a variety of topographical terms. These chiefly refer to settlements located in the northern Babylonian. In the following years, many other texts belonging to the same archive were published. In 1978, Lawrence presented a comprehensive study on the asīrī texts, in which he published in transliteration and copy 39 certain and one probable Rim-Anum texts kept in the British Museum. Lawrence listed all the known texts in which the term asīrī occurs as a closed group to be studied. However, it should be noted that not all those texts are from the same archive, and the texts not dated to Rim-Anum must be excluded from consideration here. These included the Larsa texts, as well as a text coming from Uruk dated to Annam. To Lawrence's list of published Rim-Anum texts should be added the 7 texts dated to Rim-Anum, published in the same year, 1708, by Simmons in Jos 14. Another text was studied and presented in copy by Jean-Marie Dupin in 1982. At that time, 4 separately formulated year names mentioning Rim-Anum were known, but their order was not. Rim-Anum Lugal, year in which Rim-Anum became king. Rim-Anum Lugale Dundari Namenake, year in which Rim-Anum the king, blessing offspring of kinship. Rim-Anum Lugale Mada Yemutbalum Unim Eshnuna Isin Kazallu Enebidamgi Namra Aka in Sierra Resh Am Ini in Garam, year Rim-Anum the king, the land of Emutbalum, the troops of Eshnuna Isin Kazallu, which arose against him to plunder a mass as had never been counted, with his might be overcame. Rim-Anum, the last name is Rim-Anum Lugale Unugikiga Wadambi, year in which Rim-Anum the king, Uruk and its countryside. I will simply refer to them here by their names as Lugal year, Numundari year, Emutbalum year, and Uruk year, to which another name should be added, then documented only in one text. Rim-Anum, the king, reorganized the scattered population. These year names are referred to a variety of theories. In the same way, different hypotheses have been proposed about the chronological and geographical placement of the king Rim-Anum that have been developed from the following evidence. Among the persons listed in the text, several were titles of messengers and bearers of Rim-Sin. One of Rim-Anum's year name commemorates his victory over Emutbalum and the troops of Shernuna, Isin, and Kazallu. Several tablets bearing Rim-Anum year names were found in the Sinkashid Palace at Uruk. Such evidence had led to various suggestions for Rim-Anum's chronological placements in synchronism with Rim-Sin the first of Larsa. They are as follows. Prevalent or coeval with Walad Sin of Larsa and lasting into the reign of his brother Rim-Sin, that only from 1835 to 1820 BC. This suggestion was made by Kraus based on the collection of references to Kazallu mentioned in Rim-Anum's Emutbalum year. Coeval with Dadusha of Eshnuna's raid against Mankisu, proposed by Jacobsen, based on the list of geographical names in Rim-Anum's Emutbal year. This would be parallel to the later years of Sin-Obalit of Babylon and in the middle of the reign of Rim-Sin of Larsa, thus more or less 18 BC. Between Rim-Sin's years 1 to 20, but probably quite close to year 21, which was named after Rim-Sin's defeat of Uruk. Result suggests that Rim-Anum's Uruk year and the name of Rim-Sin 21st might have commemorated the same event. Limans felt that Rim-Anum's Uruk year must refer to an event preceding Rim-Sin's conquest of that city from Rim-Anum, and so suggests that Rim-Anum's Uruk year might have been Rim-Sin year 19, in reference to a period of good relationship between Uruk and Lhasa. Falkenstein proposed the period between Rim-Sin 14 and 20, that's roughly 1809-1803 BC, because the Rim-Anum text found at Uruk suggests that the year valid there, and because of the fact that Rim-Sin commemorated the capture of King Rīm-Anum of Uruk in his 14th year. All these hypotheses were completely wrong. In fact, in 1986, a new text was published, firstly Library Philadelphia 1681. It had new information about this issue. The tablet, shown here in a photograph of its reverse, is a damaged record of bit asīrī concerning flower distributions. It is dated to the Rim-Anum's Uruk year name and carries the impression of 3 separate seals. One of these is the seal of Sin, son of E, servant of the god Amuru, probably to be interrogated Sin-Idinam, son of Idina, servant of the god Amuru. A second one is that of Nabi Ilishu, the chief account, son of Lakita Rimani, servant of Rim-Anum. Impressions of both seals are found on many other tablets in the archive. The legend of the seal is found on the reverse space, on the reverse of the tablet, on the reserved space between the end of the text and the date. This legend is of real importance for the chronological placement of the king and the archive. It's read, Apilelishu, son of Tabtar Ili, servant of Samsu Iluna. We must therefore place Rim-Anum coeval not with the rulers mentioned above, but with Samsu Iluna of Babylon, whose reign started in 1749 BC. Therefore, the name Rim-Sin in the title of Messengers and Warders was referred to the second ruler of that name, who is attested as active by Old Babylonian during Samsu Iluna's 8th to 10th years. Historically, this placement for Rim-Anum, some 15 or 16 years later than previously thought, would fight quite well. Indeed, just like the early Old Babylonian period, the Samsu Iluna period is one of upheaval and military and political change, in which small rulers could set up the plot to their own advantage. Compared with the period preceding Hammurabi's conquest, the details of the latter period are not completely clear. We may assume, however, that Babylon's withdrawal from the south sparked a resurgence of localized political activity. Some of this is documented in the information we have for such rulers as Rim-Sin II of Lhasa. Also, for the problem of the geographical placement of Rim-Anum kingdom, various hypotheses were offered. The place where Rim-Anum reigned was for a long time subject to discussion. Some scholars, such as Figula, Limons, and Falkenstein, have assumed that his locus of operation should have been Uruk, at least for part of his career. Indeed, in the palace of Sinkashid at Uruk, 86 more texts related to Rim-Anum have been discovered during systematic excavation and were published over the years. These texts do not come from the bit asīrī archive, but they present some elements and some personal names in common with the texts coming from the bit asīrī. These elements in common allows us to say that the texts found in Uruk and the bit asīrī text come from the same context. So there are good reasons to think that the bit asīrī was located in the same palace of Sinkashid at Uruk. We don't know if the kingdom of Rim-Anum started from Uruk or if he took the power on this city from another area. We can say certainly the Rim-Anum kingdom is placed in the city of Uruk, in the southern Mesopotamia, almost for the most part of its duration. This geographical placement poses a problem due to the more than 50-year gap between the last known occupation of the Sincarchid Palace and the beginning of Samsilunar's reign. However, this problem is not insuperable, because the Sincarchid Palace was very near the modern surface of the mound. We have no real information as to building's occupational history after its construction, nor for that matter about the uses to which that area might have been put after the eventual abandonment or destruction of the building. These construction considerations must be combined with the archaeological context. Indeed, the majority of the texts dated to Rim-Anum coming from the palace of Sincarchid at Uruk were found during regular excavation in the area 30 of the palace. So, we can presume that Rim-Anum placed in the palace of Sincarchid at Uruk the base of its military and economic activities, as we will see better later. The chronological placement of Rim-Anum during the reign of Samsiluna has opened some problems, especially dealing with the duration of his kingdom. At that time, 5 years reigns of Rim-Anum are known. In 2003, I published for the first time 153 unpublished Rim-Anum texts kept at the British Museum. Two of these texts gave new pieces of information about the year formulas of Rim-Anum. What were considered were considered two separate year formulas, the Uruk year name and the Ukusuk year, in reality, are a single year name. Rim-Anum, the king, reorganized the scattered population of Uruk and its countryside. In addition, a comparative study of all texts of Rim-Anum coming from the Beta Asīrī has brought to light new elements relating to another year name, Rim-Anum, Lugal, Num, Darinam, and Nake. This year name occurs in just 19 texts recording flower allocation, and the comparison between some texts dated with this year name and others dated with the Uruk year name underlined the great similarities between texts dating back to consecutive days. This allowed me to suggest that the Num year name and the Uruk year name refer to the same year. The year name of Rim-Anum, the years of Rim-Anum reign, of which we have record, would become only 3. The year of Rim-Anum ascension to the throne, indicated in the formula Rim-Anum Lugal E. The second year, indicated by the year formula, which was never documented in its full length, that is here instead brought together. And the year, Yemutbal, the third year, indicated by the year formula Rim-Anum Lugal E Mada Yemutbalum Uni Eshnuna. Isinu Kazallo, NB da Nidin, Namra Ak, in Shi Resh, and documented only for the first 3 months of the year. On the basis of the data coming from the text, it was possible to suggest that the kingdom of Rim-Anum in Uruk extended on 3 years' names, but that actually the period of Rim-Anum's power didn't even last 2 calendar years, between 18 and 24 months. The new time scheme ties in perfectly with the data we are relating to the insurrection of the south of Mesopotamia against Babylon, which began during the 8th year of Samsilunar's reign in 1742 BC. The vast territorial states that King Hammurabi of Babylon had established started showing signs of internal political conflict at the end of his reign. These problems worsened during the 8th year of Samsiluna, and in the following 6 years, Samsiluna has to deal with a series of military issues, including the Kassites and revolt in southern Babylonian conducted by Rim II of Lhasa. According to the documentation at our disposal, it seems that the city of Uruk, led by its new king Rim-Anum, freed its aim of Babylonian domination around the middle of the 8th month of Samsiluna 8, more or less at the same time as Rim-Sin's second conquest or liberation of most of southern Babylonian during the course of month 7 of the same year. The kingdoms of the two rebel kings, Rim-Sin, the second of Larsa, and Rim-Anum of Uruk, were, at least initially, perfectly parallel in their chronological development. The Samsiluna 8th year corresponds to the first year of Rim-Anum and to the first year of Rim-Sin II. Samsiluna 9 corresponds to the second year of Rim-Anum and the second year of Rim-Sin II. And Samsiluna 10 to the first year of Rim-Anum. At this time, Rim-Sin II was already dead. Therefore, I suggest that Rim-Anum ruled in Uruk during the time of the Rim-Sin II rebellion against Samsiluna of Babylon, actually for more or less 18 months. In relation between the two kings are documented by many references by Rim-Sin and Larsa in the text of Rim-Anum. The great majority of these texts date back to a time span which includes the last 3 months of the first year of Rim-Anum and the first 3 of the second year. Of these, 8 texts record flower allocation to messengers of Rim-Sin of Larsa, providing that contacts between Rim-Anum and Rim-Sin were rife in this period. After the 10th month in the second year of Rim-Anum's reign, references to messengers from Larsa become less frequent, as do the mentions of Rim-Sin, which separate from Rim-Anum text. The great military activity of those months is evident in the text of the Beta series that record the flower allocation for the overseers of the Amorites. This is the time in which the two kings are allied before Rim-Anum changed the champ after the defeat inflicted by Samsiluna to all the forces coalesced. What was observed in the text is supported by the official documentation. Indeed, the year name of Samsiluna 10 is referring to an event of the year before, commemorates the year Samsiluna the king, by the supreme power of Marduk, defeated the army of Idamarats, or the army of Eshmuna, the land of Mutbalum, Uruk, and Isin. A bilingual inscription of Samsiluna, bilingual C, reads, the year was no half over when he killed Rim-Sin II, who had caused Mutbalum to rebel and who had been elevated to the kingship of Larsa. The year name of Samsiluna 10 and the inscription both bear reference to the same event, which can be dated to the 9th year of Samsiluna. The close alliance between Rim-Anum and Larsa, partially documented in the text of the Beta series, must have collapsed after the death of Rim-Sin. It's also possible that the alliance between the two kings was damaged by the re-emergence of ancient border issues between Larsa and Uruk, now that the two cities had regained their independence. A particularly interesting text is Rositani 2003-15, dated to the Ulugal year name, where flower is allocated to 10 messengers from Larsa who came about Eduru Bisa and Al-Adad Emukashu. There was clearly a negotiation between the new kings of Larsa and Uruk over the two localities, Eduru Bisa and Al-Adad Emukashu, that we can locate thanks to other mentions between Uruk and Larsa. Therefore, we can suggest, according to Charpin, that the independence regained by Rim-Sin II and Rim-Anum revived an old border dispute over these two localities. After my volume, other Rim-Anum texts were published, some by myself, others by Andrea Seri. One very important text kept at the Yale University was published in 2012 by Peter Michalowski and Gary Regan, the promulgation of the name of the first year of Rim-Anum of Uruk. This text brought new information about this year formula. It provides a complete version of it. This tablet duplicates with variants another promulgation text for the same year published long ago. The Yale tablet come together with other tablets from the Beta Asīrī archive. The other text kept in the British Museum has the registration number K4709, but is certainly not from unique. We can presume that this tablet too came from the city of Uruk. The interpretation given to Michalowski and Beckman suggests that the armies of Lhasa, Mutbalum, Eshnuna, Isin, and Kaddalu approached Uruk, perhaps pretending to be allies. Their march created an enormous dust cloud, but after it subsided, Rim-Anum's forces defeated them and forced them to withdraw. These internal strife among the anti-Babylonian rebels obviously did not serve them well, as documented in Samsiluna's 10-year formula, which proclaimed the victory over Uruk and Isin and the marathon, that is, the territories that included Eshnuna and Mutbalum. This new year, Samsiluna 11, named after the destruction of the walls of Uruk and Ur. These destructions happened during the 10th year of Samsiluna kingdom, corresponding to the third and the last year of Rim-Anum. The year formula of the third year of Rim-Anum's reign is well documented for the first and the second months of the Beta Asīrī text, and in the text coming from the Sinkashid Palace. After this date, it only occurs in 3 texts from the Sinkashid Palace and in a receipt of silver, in which the Beta Asīrī is not mentioned. This sporadic attestation of the Mutbalum year name after the third month do not undermine the hypothesis that the power of Rim-Anum over Uruk declines after the end of the third month of his third year. They could be due to the absence of a strong political point of reference in the city. It's not difficult to imagine a period of disorder between the end of Rim-Anum's reign and Samsiluna's return to the power in Uruk. So we can say once more that Rim-Anum's kingdom covers a period of more or less than 2 years, more or less 18 months, as documented by the Beta Asīrī archive. In 2013, Seri published other 42 texts in a comprehensive study of the House of Prisoners. These texts are kept in the Free Library of Philadelphia, the Oriental Institute University of Chicago, and the Princeton Theological Seminary, and at the Yale University. She proposed a different synchronism of the reign of Samsiluna, Rim-Sin, and Rim-Anum. Samsiluna 8 corresponds to Rim-Sin, the first year, Samsiluna 9 to the first year of Rim-Anum and the second of Rim-Sin, Samsiluna 10 to the second of Rim-Anum, and Samsiluna 11 to the first of Rim-Anum. Nevertheless, other reconstruction was not affected by the community of scholars, in particular Charpin, in his review as a book, provided the previous synchronism of the reign proposed by Messina. In the same review, Charpin proposed an interesting reconstruction of the second year formula of Rim-Anum. Rim-Anum lugal enum darinam nake unugga uadambi un usuk abi cb insa o mini ig b. This formula refers to the proclamation of a Michalowski edict by Rim-Anum in the first year of his reign, lugal year, mentioned in his second, the year in which King Rīm-Anum, the eternal seed of royalty, proclaimed a Michalowski for the bewildered or troubled population of Uruk and its surrounding. Thus, the new king tried to secure his power by seeking support from the people and the clergy. Other texts were published in the last years. In particular, I published some texts that registered the gift of prisoners by the king Rīm-Anum to the most important deities. All these tablets are dated to the first year of Rim-Anum. The majority of them are the month 11, one at the month 20. Therefore, this activity could be referred to a specific situation, a public event, probably in the course of a triumph. The hypothesis of a public dedication of the prisoners to the temples could be connected to the proclamation of the Michalowski edict by Rim-Anum in the first year of his reign. Thanks to this data, it's possible to reconstruct a military action of Rim-Anum, maybe together with his allies, at the beginning of the month 11 of his first year, or immediately before, during which many important prisoners were captured from Isin, Mutiaba, Malgum, and Eshmuna, the same places that the king of Rim-Anum said to have defeated in his name of third year. Moreover, the war prisoners that the king presented to different deities were always male, after they were high-ranking military officers or were connected with important people. So it is possible that these men enjoyed a preferential treatment. It is possible that in the temples they may have worked at least harder job than the other prisoners. Their high status gives them an accordingly high value. So giving them to the temples could be a way to preserve them, because they could eventually have been exchanged to rescue other prisoners, or in exchange for a ransom, or to negotiate agreement with other kings. All of these possibilities are well known from textual evidence. The freedom of prisoners indeed could happen thanks to a payment of a ransom, attested in some texts from Mari and also in the Code of Hammurabi, by an exchange of prisoners, by an agreement, by a royal edict. Finally, the publication of another text kept at the British Museum dealing with the House of the Birds. This is the Code of Hammurabi. Okay. Gave me the possibility to think at the organization of the economic activities in the Sinkashi Palace at the time of Rim-Anum. The House of the Bird was an administrative unit similar to other houses, to the House of the Weavers, the House of the Aged, more frequent in the Seri text. All these houses were economic units, real places with a physical collocation. Some elements in the Rim-Anum text let us imagine the mission house as a place where the birds, different species of birds, were also fed, something more generic than a poultry house, similar to the birdhouse of the Uruk period, an economic unit devoted to bird husbandry, provided with a tower to host pigeons, and also with cages and partitions to host small birds and rodents. In the same way, the reconstruction of the Royal Industrial Park of Lagash could be very useful for understanding the nature of the complex in which the Seri was located. Finally, the study of our text allows us to understand many aspects of the management of prisoners. We know that the prisoners were brought to the Seri and remain in the Seri until their delivery to individuals or economic units. They were often employed in government activities. The war prisoners are usually indicated in tablet by their names, gender, age, profession, and family ties. Often is also indicated the place of origin, the city or territory where the prisoners were born or lived, the place where they were captured or bought. In most tablets are also mentioned the military officials who captured the prisoners and brought them to the Seri. In general, the prisoners were of foreign origin. They came from Eshmuna, Gutium, Mutable, Elam, Malgum, and Sutu, areas far from Uruk, while sometimes they are referred to as the booty of Isin, Lagash, Larsa, Kisura, Dunum, and Ur, all cities that were under Babylonia's rule. After being captured, the prisoners of war seem to have become the property of the palace, and most of them probably remained under the permanent control of the crown. During the period in which the prisoners were held in the Beta Seri, they were under the authority of an overseer of the prisoners of war. The most frequently mentioned is Sin Shami. Many 184 Rim-Anum tablets register allocation of flour for the meal of many different recipients. Flour is often allocated to single men from cities, regions, or ethnic entities, such as Abrum, Babylon, Dunum, Eridu, Ejnun, Idamarat, Isin, Kisura, Mutable, Sutum, or to the Gutians. On the basis of this large amount of flour, in the Rim-Anum text, I suggested that the Beta Seri should be connected with the production of flour. This work may have been done by all the prisoners during their stay in the Beta Seri before being assigned to or between two different assignments. In conclusion, all the Beta Seri texts, also coming from antiquities markets, can be assembled according to internal criteria and topographical elements. This text could be considered as an artificial archive, and the occurrence Beta Seri or asīrī are the keys to these archived elements that give coherence to all our texts scattered in different collections, but coming from the same place in ancient Mesopotamia, in the palace of Sinkhashid at Uruk. Therefore, we can imagine the Sinkhashid Palace at the time of Rim-Anum reign as a production complex comprising several economic units: the house of the weavers, the house of the birds, and the fattening house, to which may be added a place for the cattle, the palace kitchen, a granary for flour production, where prisoners were employed in grinding flour, and the Beta Seri itself, with a lot of prisoners of war available for forced labor, given to individuals or houses as temporary workers under the authority of a designated person, Nishu, but housed in the Beta Seri before being assigned or between one assigned and another. Thank you for your attention.